Recently, I've been testing the new Arturia X8 in and X8 out ADAT devices, and it reminded me that when I bought my first ADAT device, I found it a little confusing. So in this video, I'm going to answer your silly questions and let you know everything you need to know about ADAT. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Follow the VIP link in the description down below to get 7% off an already amazing price to distribute your music to the world. ADAT, the acronym itself is a little confusing. It stands for Elisa's Digital Audio Tape. And yet none of the devices we'll look at in today's video have any tape in them. So let me explain. Back in the 90s, Elisa's created some recording devices that could record up to 8 channels of digital audio on VHS tape. Now, the interesting thing was you could connect these devices together to expand the track count. And the technology that they used to connect these devices together was called ADAT light pipe. And it's really that technology that we're referring to today when we use the term ADAT. What can ADAT be used for? Nowadays, ADAT is mainly used to increase the input and output count and capabilities of audio interfaces such as this Audio Fuse 16 rig. So for example, if I were to connect this X8 in via ADAT to this audio interface, I'll increase its input count from 16 up to 24 with one single digital cable. No need for 8 individual analog cables, which could potentially introduce noise. Now, likewise, with the X8 out, if I were to connect that via ADAT to this audio interface, I'll increase its output capabilities from a current 10 up to 18. Now, with both of these devices, the inputs and outputs are 1/4-inch line level jacks. With some other ADAT devices like mic preamps, you're probably going to find XLR connectors on there. They're going to have features such as phantom power, the ability to change the gain, and also they may even color the signal. They may give it some character before sending it digitally through to your audio interface. So you need to choose the correct device for you. Now, interestingly, with the X8 out here, as well as having those 8 channels of output, they're also CV outs, control voltage outs. These can be used to connect to some synthesizers to control their parameters. So we're kind of increasing the capability here of our setup. Now, there are other types of ADAT devices such as ADAT patch bays. I've never used one of those, but I've seen them around, and things like ADAT mixers as well. Any time that you want to transfer audio from one device to another digitally, then ADAT may well be the technology which is used. Do I need a special cable for ADAT? ADAT is actually the protocol or language which is used for these devices to communicate with each other. The actual connections and cables are called toslink connections and cables. Now, I mention this because you will see some other devices such as TVs and AV receivers, for example, which have toslink connections, but that doesn't mean they're using ADAT. They're just using the same type of connections. So when you go to buy your cables for your ADAT devices, look out for toslink cables. How many extra channels can I have with ADAT? ADAT actually carries a maximum of 8 channels per connection, but even that depends on what sample rate we're using. So if on both of our devices, for example, we were using 44.1 or 48 kilohertz, then our channel count could be up to 8 channels. However, when we use higher sample rates, something called SMUX is used to actually increase our sample rate, but at the expense of channel count. So for example, at 88.2 or 96 kilohertz, the channel count goes down to 4. And at higher sample rates like 176.4 or 192 kilohertz, the channel count goes down to 2. Now, with these particular devices, we can still transmit and receive 8 channels at 88.2 and 96 kilohertz, but we have to use 2 cables. Each of these devices has 2 ADAT connections on the back, and if our other device is capable and has 2 inputs or outputs, then we can actually transmit 8 channels at those higher sample rates. So that's something to keep in mind when you're buying your ADAT devices. Do I have to use the same brands with ADAT? ADAT devices come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. One of the things I really like about this X8 in and X8 out is, first of all, they can be bought separately, so you can buy them according to your needs. But if you do buy 2 of them, they stack nicely on top of each other in this kind of desktop configuration, or they come with a kit so you can join them together and use them in a 1U rack configuration. I really like that because then they sit really nicely alongside my Audio Fuse 16 rig. But am I implying by this that all of your ADAT devices need to be the same brand, in this case Arturia? Well, no, they don't need to be the same brand. You can mix and match your brands with ADAT devices. The only thing you need to be mindful of is their actual ADAT capabilities. So for example, with this audio interface from Antelope Audio, the Zen Q, really nice audio interface, and it does have ADAT, but it has just one connection, an ADAT in. So we can expand the number of inputs with a small device like this, but we can't expand the number of outputs. With another one I have here, this is a regularly seen on my desktop, is the Apollo X4. Now with this, we have both ADAT in and ADAT out as well. So we can expand our inputs and our outputs. And finally, with this Audient ID24 here, it not only has both ADAT out and ADAT in, but it also has a Wordclock connection, which is kind of related to ADAT, and we're going to discuss it later on. Can I connect 2 audio interfaces with ADAT? Yes. You can join 2 audio interfaces together via ADAT, so long as they both, of course, have ADAT capabilities. And in this way, like we looked at before, you can increase the channel count of one or the other audio interface. Now do keep in mind, we're only increasing the channel count. We can't access the other capabilities of that audio interface via ADAT at least. So we've still got a few more important and frequently asked questions about ADAT coming up, but I wanted to quickly remind you, if you're releasing your music to places like Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, etc., don't forget to check out our sponsor DistroKid. If you follow the VIP link in the description down below, you'll get 7% off of your first year of membership. Can I daisy chain ADAT devices? The concept of ADAT daisy chaining is this. You've got your primary audio interface, you take a second one, you connect them via ADAT, adding an extra 8 channels of input to your primary one. Then you add a third one in the same way to your second one, and a fourth one in the same way to your third one, so on and so forth, hoping that each time you add an extra 8 channels of input to your primary audio interface. Will that work? Well, in a nutshell, no, it won't work. Now you can certainly connect them all up in that way, but remember, with that final connection between the second one and your primary audio interface, you've got that one ADAT cable, and I'm afraid to tell you that's still only capable of carrying 8 channels maximum of audio. Now that's not to say you're always maxed out at an extra 8 channels with your audio interface. As we discussed earlier, some audio interfaces, such as this Audio Fuse 16 rig, will have more than one ADAT in connection. So you could connect multiple ADAT devices to it, and each one of those can add extra channels, but you can't do it with a daisy chain. How do I plug in the ADAT cables? Now, just in case this isn't super clear, let's make it really obvious. When you're taking your ADAT cable, you connect one end to the ADAT out of one of your devices, and then the other end of your cable will then go to the ADAT in on your other device, and vice versa. What you don't do is try and connect in to in or out to out. That won't work. Now quickly, while we're talking about cables, I didn't put this in as a question, but I just want to quickly chat about cable length. So apparently the maximum length of cable that really works with ADAT is between 5 and 10 meters. Beyond that, you may need some kind of booster. Probably isn't worth it, to be honest with you, but that might be an important consideration when you're planning out your studio. Do all sample rates have to be the same with ADAT devices? Yes, all of your connected ADAT devices need to be working at the same sample rate. If they're not at the same sample rate, you'll get all kinds of jitters and pops and clicks and things you don't want. So you want to make sure they're at the same sample rate, but sometimes you don't have to manually set it. Sometimes one of these devices will actually automatically set the sample rate on another device, and that brings us to another subject. How should I set the master and slave settings with ADAT? So when we've got several ADAT devices connected to one another, we want to make sure that as they're processing that audio, that they're all staying in sync with each other. This is a concept called clocking, and within that concept there's the idea that one device will be the master device. It will be in charge of the sync or the clocking, and the other devices will be what we call slaves. Now there's different ways that you can do this. There's not exactly a correct way. You could choose any of your devices to be the master device for clocking, but I tend to prefer it to be my main audio interface, and then the other devices are the slaves. So actually in my studio I have an audio interface which has another 2 audio interfaces connected to it and a mic preamp, and my main audio interface is the master and all of the others are slaves. Now that clocking or synchronization mechanism is a part of the ADAT protocol, but there's still a better way to handle it. What is Wordclock? Do I need it? On some ADAT devices, you'll see something called a BNC connection for Wordclock. Now, Wordclock is another protocol for controlling sync or clocking between devices. And you may wonder, why do I need to use Wordclock when the ADAT protocol already has clocking included? Well, put simply, Wordclock is a lot more efficient. It's dealing solely with clocking. It doesn't carry any audio information or anything like that at all. And because of that, it's more efficient. Now, sometimes what you'll find if you don't use Wordclock and you've got multiple ADAT devices connected to one another, then clocking can become a problem and you'll get some artifacts or pops and clicks, etc. Now, when you've got a simple setup, like say just one ADAT device connected to another one, usually that's not going to be a problem. But personally, whenever I can, I do actually use the Wordclock connection for synchronization, and I've got to tell you, I never have any problems with artifacts. So that's the way to go, I reckon. So I think that's probably everything that you really need to know about ADAT in terms of deciding what ADAT devices to buy and how to hook them all up and get going with it. If you've got any questions that I haven't answered in this video, do ask down below. If I'm not able to answer that question, I'm sure one of the wonderful people from my community will be only too glad to help you out. Now, getting back to the specific equipment here in today's video, by the way, I'm not being sponsored by Arturia for this video, but these are the devices which I happen to be looking at the moment, so it was handy to make this video with. I will put some links for these in the description down below if you think you may be interested in buying them. I will say with these particular devices, where I would find them super handy, or where I'm gonna find them super handy, is that I can permanently hook up some external audio gear to them without having to continuously go behind my desk and plug and unplug things. So things like sort of compressors and things that I've got in my racks, I can hook up permanently to this. For other people, it may be the fact that you've got one of those walls of synthesizers that I see some people have, and you may want to permanently plug them all in. And this is a great solution, still leaving the main inputs and outputs free on your main audio interface. So I can highly recommend them in terms of build quality, and their features are great as well. So as I say, you can follow the links in the description down below for that. I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. I'll see you in the next video.